Welcome to CIC 16. Let's talk today about a book, Duchamp in California, Walter Hopps Creates a Retrospective by Don Quaintance. Don Quaintance is an art historian and a former graphic designer at the Menil collection. He worked closely with Walter Hopps while he worked there years ago. And this is a really great book. It's so rich in detail and so much anecdotes. I remember reading Calvin Tompkins' book on Duchamp now maybe 30 years ago, and I really enjoyed that book a long time ago. And I think that book left me wanting a bit, although it filled in a lot of gaps for me, but just so much more to know. And this book, Duchamp in California by Don Quaintance, really does do a huge job in describing not only the events that led to Marcel Duchamp's retrospective in 1963, but the milieu that surrounded that retrospective, Duchamp's career, the artists that were attracted to him early on, the ones that discovered him mid-flight, the gallery scene, the collectors, especially the Arnebergs. It's a really great book. So what I'm going to do is describe the book chapter for chapter and try to go in a nice fast clip. Chapter 1. Walter Hopps' first encounter with Marcel Duchamp at the Arnsberg Hollywood residence in 1949, when he was a high school student on a field trip hosted by LACMA, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. The book describes the Arnsberg's home and collection, Duchamp's bond with the collectors, principally Arnsberg and Catherine Dreyer. This chapter ends with Hopps' second encounter with Duchamp in 1962 as the planning for the retrospective got underway. Chapter 2 begins with Duchamp's arrival in Los Angeles and diverts to a description of Duchamp's oblique relationship with the art industry, his growing popularity with artists, how Duchamp eased out of his self-imposed obscurity. Very fascinating arc. Chapter 3 describes the history of Pasadena and the entrepreneur Grace Nicholson, whose peculiar Chinese-inspired building was donated to what eventually became the Pasadena Art Museum. Chapter 4, Sourcing Artworks for the Retrospective. Hopps' initial approaches to the Duchamp's collections at MoMA, Philadelphia Museum of Art, and the Yale University Art Museum required the enlisting of Duchamp's support to ease access to those collections. Quaintance vividly describes a significant contribution by William Copley in the whole endeavor. Copley is quite a figure and very important to know. Chapter 5, Ready-Made History and the Sourcing of Replicas. Remade replicas. Remade ready-mades. There's also the description of sourcing pieces from the Moderna Museet Museum in Stockholm. Chapter 6, the main event, the exclusive preview of the exhibition, the installation, the social circles, the artists, collectors, gallerists, movie stars who attended. Then afterwards, the after party at the Hotel Green. And Hotel Green itself is quite a character in this story. A moldering, once glamorous and glorious hotel became Duchamp's favorite destination even after it had become defunct. Chapter 7, the public opening, touring LA, visiting Betty Asher, Ferris Gallery, Dawn Gallery, and the studios of Larry Bell. This chapter ends with a description of the making of the catalog, poster, and invitations via master printer Henry Geiger. Chapter 8, a granular exposition of the exhibition design. Incredible detail there. I mean, Quaintance just went way over the top in going into helping us understand how it was laid out and where the works were. Chapter 9, the excursion to Las Vegas with William Copley's role as the flamboyant tour guide. Here, we get a vivid sense of the gambling, the floor shows, and shopping at Max Factor's retail clothing store's outpost there. Parenthetically, Duchamp was not the most vigorous gambler. It was Betty Asher, an extremely aggressive gambler. And also Walter Hopps turned $200 into $2,000, which is interesting. Chapter 10, Return to Los Angeles and Richard Hamilton's lecture, the first of many in a touring circuit for him. We get a vivid sense of Hamilton's dedication to Duchamp as his #1 disciple, and that's an understatement. Chapter 11, a road trip to the Mount Wilson Observatory. And then Quaintance delves into Alfred Jarry's pataphysics and the involvement of Simon Watson Taylor, who was the energetic director of the Collège de Pataphysique. I love the connection to Jarry. An idea of mine that postmodernism began as an egg that cracked and yielded two Janus-sided twins, modernism and postmodernism, with Jarry as the herald for the postmodern. And Jarry, I think, is the granddaddy of Duchamp. Chapter 12, Chess, the circumstances and reverberations of the iconic photo shoot with Duchamp and Eve Babbitt's. Chapter 13, the aftermath, Hopps' exhaustion, Duchamp's return to New York City and back to Pasadena to close the exhibition. And then the press reports of the exhibition, with LA Times and Art Forum giving tribute, while the New York Times, Art in America, and Time Magazine rendered scant coverage. So, what do I make of this book? Obviously, I love it. It's a great book. There's so much I've learned in it. It's just almost overwhelming to try. I wanted to relate it to you, but I would get so bogged down in the many details I've learned here, the sort of lifting of the veil a bit and hearing more about the histories, not just of Duchamp, but everybody surrounding him. So what do I make of this book? Obviously, I like it a lot, I think, and that's an understatement. I really enjoyed it. I devoured the book. It's just so full of detail and anecdotes and backstories, filling you in on cities and people, collectors and writers and artists, of course. And it's just such a kaleidoscope, all organized around the historic retrospective of Duchamp in Pasadena in 1963. But what are my reverberations? What do I think about when the camera's off about this book? One thing I wrote in my notes is temperament is everything. What do I mean by that? In the book, I've learned a bit more about Duchamp's character, bringing him down from a sort of Olympus level, godlike status, to a much more human level. And I began, after reading this book, to appreciate more of Marcel Duchamp as a human being. And this particular human being loved his freedom. And in an earlier blog post I wrote about an exhibition, Francis Picabia exhibition at MoMA, and along the way I talk about the influence of, this was December 1st, 2016, and I wrote about the influence of Max Stirner, the anarchist philosopher, on Duchamp. It made a lot of sense to me, and I still think it's true. It's something I learned on, let me get the book. In that blog post, a lot of information I got from going to the exhibition and seeing this, and from reading this catalog, Duchamp, Man Ray, and Picabia. So yeah, he is perhaps an anarchist influenced by Stirner's ideas, but there's more philosophers in the world than that. And in Duchamp in California, I learned about another philosopher that was a big influence on him, which is Pyrrho of Ely. And this is a Greek philosopher whose writings may never possibly have ever existed. Maybe 500 or 1,000 years after his death, people were writing about him. And he's a skeptic, essentially. He was a philosopher who did not want to anchor himself down with any dogma and was very fierce about that. And I think that's a central idea that Duchamp took from Pyrrho of Ely. He was a lone ranger, and he didn't really want to belong to any art movement. He had almost not a phobia of it, but a kind of reaction to groups and group behavior and herd mentality. And that along with his abiding intelligence, which was undeniable, but not godlike, set him on the course of his career. It's attributed to Heraclitus that character's destiny, and Duchamp's destiny definitely is due to his character. A person who was reticent for most of his life until he got over it. A kind of very canny person who, after the 1913 Armory exhibition, when the Arnsberg family snapped up a majority of his works in that show, and afterwards recovered other escaped paintings, the nude descending a staircase being one of them. Duchamp smartly not only kept his connection to Arnsberg, but also other collectors, like critically Catherine Dreyer, and became so close that he had a great influence on them as to the disposition of their works after their passing. Specifically for Catherine Dreyer, he became the executor for her estate, distributing his works to the right museums. Now, this was happening, and you think, when you hear this story, that like Duchamp, whoa, what a sharp operator. And definitely that's a sharp move. But it's also fortune that landed upon him, that he became the star of the Armory exhibition in 1913, and these collectors alighted upon him. And no doubt credit to his intelligence, that when they actually met him, they were not only charmed but impressed with his force of his intellect, which cemented their bonds, because the Arnsbergs were no fools. But because Duchamp would not attend openings, mainly group shows that he was included in, because his production was so small, because his works weren't catering to the art industry, not creating in volume. And there's so many great quotes from Duchamp. Maybe I'll flash one up as I'm speaking. The one about artists taking shits, making work like taking shits. That's quite a quote. Because he had an oblique relationship to the art industry, even as nascent as it was in those days. He became kind of, in a way, in the shadows. Only the cognoscenti, the hipsters, would sort of seek him out and want more, because he was an outlier in those days. Or talking about the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. The big game in town was abstract expressionism and everything painting, and definitely it's no surprise that an artist conceptualist like Duchamp would be in the shadows. But he contributed that. He would not go to his openings. He would. Some people thought he was like dead and stuff like this. So he was just so out of the action, and deliberately so, that it kind of affected him, so that when it came time for Hops to source the works and to charm Museum of Modern Art, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Yale University, which are the three institutions that were main repositories of his work, they were churlish and reticent, and it was only until Duchamp got in and rubber stamped the green light for this exhibition that things started to move. And when it did move, the gears moved only very slowly. So a bit churlish for an art world who underestimated Duchamp in the strength of his life. But I don't know. I think that there were definitely statements that I read through the book that Duchamp was stung a bit by this, but then at the same time he cultivated this. So he made this happen, this relationship to an art world. Personally, I rather like that. I think that it's important for artists not to make work for exhibitions, but make exhibitions work for artists. And definitely when you see an exhibition, especially retrospectives, which we've just seen, and there's several now in the history of art of Marcel Duchamp, the exhibitions do have to work rather hard. That's the way it should be. There's also this thing about the ambient conservatism of the world, of America, of maybe less so in New York and more so in California, as the tale is told in this book, and I don't doubt that at all. I've lived through it, actually. Duchamp was making his work rather libertine in attitude, definitely off reservation in terms of medium and approach to art, in a context that was very conservative. And part of me thinks that the strength of his work was because it was flying against the wind, or into the wind or away from the wind, sort of bucking the system. And as he became popularized, as I read through the book, as young artists, Ed Keenholz, Billy Al Bankston, all the great famous LA artists, Robert Irwin, Ed Ruscha. And what I'm about to say doesn't apply to all these artists, but this is sort of the feeling I get of the early hipsters, the sort of beatniks turned hippies in the 50s and 60s in Los Angeles, and percolating what became pop art and what became postmodernism in the art world at large. That the blossoming of Duchamp's influence and its manifestation in culture at large kind of doesn't work well with that attitude. How do you become an outsider in a world of outsiders? How do you there's something that's going on there that I think is just worthy of thinking more, and I'm not going to go more because I'll be talking forever, but there's something there you have to think about. Being an outlier in the 20s and 30s is a hell of a lot different than being an outlier in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and now 2025. And maybe the lassitude we all feel about the art world right now, this sense of torpor, maybe it comes from this. And if artists like de Kooning and Pollock and stuff were just sort of mere shadows of Picasso's Cubism, aren't other artists shadows of what Duchamp was today? Artists today, Duchamp was then. So I'm just going to go ahead and read. I'm not supposed to read for the camera here, but I'm going to read because I can't get it out any other way. I write in my notes, beguiling, attractive, yet indeterminate. It could very well be that all that was produced under the realm, regime, the rubric of postmodernism can find its seed in the oeuvre of Marcel Duchamp. Assemblage, pop, conceptual, identity, installation, happenings, and more. Nearly all the products of the consequent art gutterballed into a deterministic and unattractive after novelty wore out. The offspring of Duchamp are largely incapable of maintaining the indeterminacy intelligent enough to arrest closure and thus be beguiling, which is the key for Duchamp. Random exceptions would be artists like Smithson, Judd, and then Raymond Pettibone, just to name three almost random artists. I'm not saying that all products of postmodernism are mere shadows of Duchamp. But there's something about personality. As I said earlier, character is destiny. And in a way, it has a kind of positive and negative connotations. Character is destiny, the phrase, Heraclitus. And what saves us from the dark side of that philosophical point of view, again, character is destiny, what saves us is the possibility that we can shape our character and make it better. But the bright, shining side of this maxim is we don't have to copy Duchamp. We just kind of have to be who we are and make the work that's appropriate to who we are, which is what Duchamp fiercely defended. And now I want to cut to the song by Earth, Wind & Fire, Be Ever Wonderful. Be ever wonderful, all right. Stay as you are. The time is right for you tonight. Find your place, oh, among the bright lights. Stay as you are. And be ever wonderful. All right. Stay as you are. What's wrong with you? Many people claim, don't always feel the same. As you live today, Life is short. Art is long. Play the long game. Duchamp certainly did.